Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Tonight we shall focus on brain drain. But just before we go into the conversation, brain drain is a slang that indicates a substantial immigration or migration of individuals. A brain drain can result from turmoil within the nation, the existence of favorable professional opportunities in other countries, or a desire to seek a higher standard of living. A human capital flight is the emigration or immigration of individuals who have received advanced training at home. The net benefits of human capital flight for the receiving country are sometimes referred to as a brain gain, whereas the net costs for the sending country is sometimes referred to as brain drain. Well, these would be given a more elaborate perspective when we go to the conversation after this background report put together by Muhammad Garba Nata'ala.
Now, when you hear the word brain drain, what comes to mind first? Possibly you will put it or have the feeling that what you have gained or acquired will burst or shoot out of your brain. No. Brain drain deals simply with skills and intellect that you have acquired. Considering the living standard, you say it is no longer working for you in this current location. All right? Then you decide, why not change your location? Possibly, you might find it easier. Jaba, however, is the new trending word among Nigerians today, meaning to live for greener pastures abroad. The means of transportation is either by air, water, or road, through the wilderness of the desert to Europe and beyond.
Nigeria has made a lot of inroads in the area of robotic technology. Professor Baz Enaji is one of those renowned intellectuals celebrated worldwide. We have Jelani Aliu, is another Nigerian celebrated worldwide. We have so many of them, but at the end of it, Nigeria has succeeded in getting good name. And then what we saw was the reverse of the trajectory of our progression from 1960s, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We now started seeing, instead of people from different parts of the world wanting to come into Nigeria, we started seeing Nigerians are the one in exodus out of the country.
Over the years, unemployment, poverty, lack of standard education, poor working conditions have forced Nigeria's skilled professionals in the fields of science and technology, medicine, law, engineering, among others, to migrate from the country for greener pastures. The Jaba phenomenon, or brain drain, now has become a major concern for the government, considering its workforce and wealth of expertise lost to another region rather than contribute to the growth and development of the nation. Media sources suggest the effect of brain drain is particularly distinct in the healthcare and banking sectors. But to some Nigerians, Japa is not completely a bad idea.
I met a professor who was interested in my work, and he approached me to let me know he would like to work with me.
I am lucky to meet Dr. Salawi Ibrahim, a Nigerian legally based in the United States and has returned home as an aviation engineer.
We maintain the fleet of over 700 narrow-body and wide-body aircraft we have in our fleet. So I initially working on the fuselage aspect of the aircraft.
He intends to utilize the skills he has acquired in improving services in the nation's aviation industry. Meet Dr. Kazim Bello, also returned and making his contribution in the financial sector.
I study both in Nigeria. My first and second degrees were earned in Nigeria, even though I've been abroad doing some professional training, but not to work. So when the opportunity came, it was instructive for me to take that advantage and let me see what is going on at the other side of the world.
He pointed out that many Nigerians in the diaspora have recorded giant strides in various fields. In spite of the huge remittances Nigeria receives, analysts say more needs to be done in turning around brain drain to brain gain.
If you want Nigerians to come back to their motherland and invest, you must be prepared to fight corruption. You must be prepared to fight injustice. The government should think of the best it can to really invest in education. No nation can develop better than the investment it has made in its own educational institutions.
Though migration is a natural human phenomenon, how can professionals be encouraged to stay? What kind of enabling environment other than this is needed to improve the nation's service delivery? These and more issues and answers shall be provided by guests on the program.
Right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me introduce our guests. I would like to welcome to this program Professor Nuhu Yakub, a former Vice Chancellor of the University of Abuja and also former Vice Chancellor of the Sokoto State University. Prof, it's nice to have you join us.
It's also a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Right. Let me also welcome Dr. Umar Binder, former Director General, National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, NOTA.
Yep.
He's been here with us. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
He's also an engineer. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, sir.
And I would like to introduce Olabisi Aina, a professor of sociology and gender studies at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, who joins us via Zoom. Thank you for being with us, Prof. Also, let me welcome Dr. Right. Also, let me welcome Afolabi Mokwede, human capital strategist and financial accountant. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Thank you for being there tonight.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to have you.
And let me also welcome Dr. Wabufo Nwike, medical practitioner, who joins us via Zoom from Dublin in Scotland. Doc, thanks for being with us tonight. Okay? All right. So thank you so much for being with us, and we just watched that report, and perhaps the first place to start off is to ask, is there something to worry about? This brain drain, as we put it, or intellectual flight. Do you worry about that, Prof?
Yes, to a certain extent, I'm worried that, the country has spent quite a lot of money. I mean, people may argue how much is this lot of money, but let's just assume that whoever is relevant and qualified to get out of this country, has enjoyed, this facility, the services of this country, and a loss. I mean, the migration of that individual is a huge loss in terms of, the resources spent on such individuals, and the inability of the country to utilize the knowledge, the essential ingredients of, contributing to the development of this country. So I am worried, and any government should be worried. But if they go out, it is very likely that they may come in contact with opportunities that even enhance their skills and knowledge, which at that point is being enjoyed by the country of residence and not this country any longer. And it is so painful that we are losing manpower that will have remained here in this country to help this country to actually embark on very fundamental development and reorganization of the society. It is something to worry about also, because it takes a while to train these individuals that are required elsewhere. It takes a while, and you cannot recover it. For me, if they go out and this country suffers from, the impact of the impact of, the loss of their departure from this country. It's like for me, we are mourning somebody who is dead because you can't get the person back. But some people may also look at it from a different dimension and say, well, when they get there, either they, afford the country the opportunity of, transfer of, finances or, if you like, some resources back to the country. But I think it's better for us to have them here and contribute to the development of the country, because also, there are certain skills that we don't have. And the skills that actually, migrate from this country are skills that we need very essentially.
Okay, thank you. We'll return to it. Dr. Binder, well, this never used to be a big problem, but suddenly there's something that looks like a mass exodus of highly trained individuals. You worry about that?
Well, actually, our country is a big country, now over probably getting to 230, 250 million people. These people require food, these people require health care, loads of children require education, and unfortunately all these requirements of our people depends on the transformation of knowledge into socio-economic solutions. And now, brain drain, literally, it's not just anybody who leaves the country, etc. There are some, it's good riddance. They have gone, that's it, let them stay wherever they go. But when you are losing your scientists, you are losing your engineers, you are losing your nurses, you are losing your pilots, you are losing your economists, finance and banking specialists, you have to be worried, especially our country that has a poverty ranking of maybe 50 to 60%. You need this know-how, you need these skills, you need this knowledge to transform. However, what Nigeria does not understand is that it is not just being a Nigerian. You may be fully trained in Nigeria and you have all the skills and competencies to transform. You may be partially educated in this country and then partially educated abroad, and therefore people recognize you. You may possibly even be totally educated out of the country. All these pool of specialists are required in Nigeria. But Nigeria is competing with other countries for these same people. South Africans will come here and show you a signboard to say, hey, you can lead a better life in South Africa. Our healthcare is fantastic. Your children will have good education and you will have a better salary. What are you doing here? And then you look up and down and you realize that you are not Father Christmas. So you follow the South Africans. The Europeans will come here when they see, they track this very carefully, particularly for those who are educated abroad. They follow you, they track you, and they track you where you are, and they give you the incentive. This country has to be super worried for first, losing the ones that are trained in this country. Second, for losing the ones that are partially trained in this country and then possibly refined abroad and are not coming back. For third, for people who had opportunity to be fully trained abroad and not returning. And you can see we are having economic problems. We are having infrastructure problems. We are having security problems. All this requires such kind of people to do the research and development, to invent and innovate solutions, to deploy these solutions to affect people, to ensure that entrepreneurship is booming, to ensure that we take advantage of the varied opportunities in agriculture, in solid minerals, in so many things. Brain drain out of Nigeria is a real problem, as far as I am concerned.
Okay. Well, let's go over to Ile-Ife and link up with Professor Olabisi Aina of the Obafemi Awolowo University in Pro.
Thank you very much. I also take the same cue, but I also like us to go back to history. The concept of migration, I think it's as old as humanity itself. Migration is supposed to be a normal thing that people move. They have freedom of movement, of deciding where they want to be. So sometimes you move out and you move in. It's just a natural phenomenon. But like we said before, when it becomes very intentional that I just want to leave, and you live in a way that you're actually not thinking of coming back, then for a country it becomes a problem. First, in the era of trying to bring in education and ensuring that we have our own human resource, a lot of persons, went out to train. And at that time, in the 70s and 60s, people trained and they were anxious to come back home. And at that time, after your PhD, people are just rushing to come back home. And you are not actually looking for work outside of your country. Because as soon as you get to your country, not only is a job waiting for you, but you also help to settle down. But today, you find out that, there's a twist. And I think the twist, we start to, how did we get to where we are? And I think the neoliberal stand, for the third world countries, when the government and the public sector stop taking responsibility for welfare of the person or citizens, and we leave a lot of things into private economy, and then the private sector is gaining and public sector is losing, to an extent that the life of the person is no longer a concern of government. That is when it started. And I remember that with SAP, a lot of brain drain started at that instance, particularly for us of the university, when colleagues were leaving. And you look at yourself today, if you were in the university in the mid-80s, when we had the initial experience of SAP, and you stayed back because you love your country and you want to build it, and you stayed back and you compare yourself with even your colleagues who left the country who are not as better as you were, and today you can hardly even feed or train your kids. You are asking yourself whether you had actually made the right decision. And so, for those who are younger and who saw that, and who saw what happened to their parents, I am sure they are not ready, to have a second flash of history in their life. So you have a lot of people moving out of the country because they know that the best is to move out and to be able to get the best for themselves. So you look therefore, with the political economy of migration, and when you look at that political economy, you also see it's a trade mark, internationally, where the more developed countries are gaining the little we have, and we're losing. And we are losing. We might think, oh, they send back remittances and so on. The remittances they are selling is sending, is actually making our own country poorer in terms of, competing with its peers internationally. It's been said, I don't want to, to repeat what has been said, that we have lost. It's not just that people are moving, but the best of us are moving out. The best of the brains are moving out. Our hospitals are vacant. Our universities are vacant. Talk about where you need a country to showcase itself. Everyone is moving out. And so even in sports, sometimes we borrow what's supposed to be our own, because they have been bought, by foreign clubs. So this is it. It's not we are big. It's a big country. We're about 200, over 200 million people. We don't mind if some of them move out and come back. But by the time that even within that population, it looks as if we don't have population. Because the population of those who are supposed to drive this country are no longer available. We can't find them to help us. We are at a critical stage that we have to compete. We can't even compete. And it's getting to a stage that you ask yourself whether in this we have a country. And if you see the vacancy of knowledge in the university, if you see the number of people who are left, in fact, it becomes worrisome when it's not just the youth that are leaving. And you find people about associate professor, and one day they just pack their load and everybody is going. And you're asking yourself, what do you have as a nation? Thank you.
Right, Prof. added to the number of issues we'll look at. But let's come to Afolabi Imokwede, the human capital strategist and financial accountant, who joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Well, the human capital, the most important resource of a country, and that's what it would seem Nigeria is losing in droves. It's human capital exiting and seeking better opportunities outside. And for some, as some of our respondents have said, they may not actually be thinking of coming back. What do you have to say to that?
Thanks, Mr. Stober. I think the reality, I mean, so a lot has been said. I think one of the first things we need to realize now is that the world has become a global village. So it becomes smaller, even post-COVID, wherein with technology, we're able to do as much. We have a doctor now who is joining us from Dublin, Ireland, and I'm in Lagos, and we're in different places, and yet we're still able to interact. So that's really for us the reality of how small a global village the world has become. But very closely knitted with that is also the fact that it's now a competitive world. And human capital, as you were saying earlier, the skills and competencies and knowledge that you have really are your tools in trade by which you compete personally as individuals, and which also aggregation of that is what nations use to compete. So what we must therefore ask ourselves really is the nations where, so I think first and foremost there are two ways, right? So we have a lot of our citizens who are traveling out for purposes of education. And so that calls to question, first and foremost, as one of the earlier speakers said, investment in our education here locally. So that's a different topic on its own. However, when you do go out to acquire additional knowledge, like I did, I was out of the country at some point too, to gain additional knowledge, to gain additional exposure. So it's not always all negative, right? So you go out there, you gain the exposures, you gain international best practices, and you are able to sharpen your competitive edge. So that's one bit. Now, the second bit is, okay, after you've gained this exposure, knowledge, best practices, work experience, are you planning to come back or you stay put? That's where, again, what nations do to attract talent, to attract capital, that's where it comes in, right? So if where you have gone to, if they value you more than where you are coming from, there's a tendency for you to say, you know what, I'll stay back here and I'll continue to contribute my quota. On the other hand, you may also choose to come back after a few years, wherein you then want to be able to do the same in our country. So that's a way to look at it. The biggest challenge now, however, is that migration is a normal occurrence of life. So migrating out is not a problem. It's just the fact that what's a percentage of those who are coming back versus those who are staying put. But then again, let's also realize as well that we are a country that is blessed. We're a youthful country. 65% of our 200 million population thereabout it's all under the ages of 35. So we're a youthful country. Now, that's also where we then call in the role of technology, wherein we can, a lot of our young people who obviously are the one who gain skills in technology, they are displaying what we see. We see a lot of our Nigerian founders in that space, and they are actually staying back to solve local problems. So it's not all doomsday, is the point I want to make. So we just really need to analyze it properly and know where to pitch our tent and the roles for each of our stakeholders. But the reality is, the fact is that the world is a global village. It's a case of give and take, but we must be competitive, and we must be global. We must be globally competitive, to attract or retain our talent.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we still have one of our resource persons tonight, and Dr. Nwabufo Wiki. He is a medical practitioner in Ireland, and he joins us also via Zoom. We're trying to establish exactly where Dr. Wiki is joining us from. He practices in Ireland. Dr. Wiki, yes, if you can hear me. Right. Oh, yes, there you are. Thanks for being with us tonight. And we would like you also to give us your thoughts on what's yes, I'd like to believe that you you have unmuted your sound. Oh dear. Okay. Well, we'll try and fix that, and perhaps we'll get back to you at some point in time. We'll get back to Dublin and see if we can. But back here in Abuja, well, Professor Yakub, some others have said, well, it's a global village, and individuals also have a right to seek better opportunities elsewhere to improve themselves, and some of those who live in also have the opportunity to acquire more skills in those countries they've gone to, and perhaps those skills will become of benefit to the country when they either return or they acquire such knowledge that again would for instance, Nigerian professionals are all over the world, and being big ambassadors, very good ambassadors of the country. So that's another way of looking at it.
Well, that's okay. We can look at it from that angle. But I think the most important thing is, what is we have to be more concerned with what is the net gain and what is the net loss. And if what we are losing is greater than what we are gaining, it doesn't go well for this country. And I don't also think that, we simply have to assert that, the world is a global village. How many of the Americans or the Japanese are coming to Nigeria to come and settle or to come and add value on the basis of the competencies and knowledge they have? I think what we should be concerned about in this country is that we are losing talents, we are losing experts. How do we actually come up with policies that will enable us to retain them? Retention is what we are which we are concerned about. As Professor Aina, is that?
Yes.
Okay, as she said, some of us actually trained outside. I did my second degree in Canada in the early 80s. And I went there, finished my master's program, and I was itching to come back. After a while, I got federal government scholarship to go to the UK to go and do my DPhil at the University of Sussex. I seized the opportunity, went there, and acquired my proficiency, and came back. If that's the situation that enabled generations of the 80s, 70s to go out, acquire this knowledge and skills and come back are no more there. I think this is what, policy focus we should be looking at. What has gone wrong? What can we do to encourage people to go out, acquire this knowledge, especially where we don't have? And, as for some, one could also even argue that, in the 70s, 80s, we don't have, many institutions that will accommodate, people who want to study. That's why people also went out. But we now have institutions. And as, I have retired about 2-3 years ago, from the university system. And I know, what the underbelly of the university system is. That is, in other words, we do not have, people with competencies that will handle the number of students we have. When I had the opportunity of going to teach as a scholar in residence at, North Carolina University in the U.S., I was told that I could not admit more than 24 students in my class. So, students who I was teaching, African politics. Students Americans who wanted to know more about African politics, wanted to gravitate to my class, but I could not take them. But if you compare the situation I experienced over there with what is the situation in Nigeria, the story is so pathetic. Pathetic in the sense that you have a lecture hall or a class where you have over 200 students. And in that class, you are only capable of, the teacher in the class is only one person. In the first instance, they may not even have the public address system to get the information or what the stuff is teaching to the students. And then you have rowdiness in the class. So these are some of the things that could have been, alleviated if some of our experts are here. That is one way of looking at the problem of this, migration of skills out of this country, and should be a major a major issue of a policy for government.
Okay. Well, I think we can now return to Dublin and link up with Dr. Nwabufo Wike, who is a medical practitioner in Ireland. Yes, Dr. Glad that you can hear us now, and you probably have been following the conversation so far. And, let's hear your opening comments on this.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I have not from inception, but I want to talk about my Irish experience. I trained in the College of Medicine of the University of Lagos, and after graduation did my housemanship there and the National Orthopedic Hospital in Ibobi, and then went into practice. I had my practice in Surulere, around Lansing. Then I got married. My wife went to Ireland to give birth. And the plan was for her to deliver and come back. When she delivered, she refused to come back. And I was visiting, going first to Lagos to get the visa to Ireland and then to Abuja. And then the family was split. Eventually, I joined and did the necessary exams to start practicing. Now, that was my story of coming to Ireland. Now, let me say one or two things about brain drain, the Irish experience. Initially, it was not my intention to migrate to Ireland or anywhere else. But when I joined the family, I started practice. Brain drain is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's almost a global thing. In Ireland, the doctors in Ireland are living in droves. and the popular destination would be Canada, Australia, and the US. Not only doctors, nurses, it's difficult for to retain doctors in Ireland, both indigenous doctors and foreign doctors. The same with other healthcare workers. It's a source of worry, concern to the government. It became a national issue. And then government started addressing it. Essentially, the major reason why people leave is mostly economic. Suffice to say that even in Ireland, there are about 50 to 80 million Irish nationals outside Ireland and 5 million in Ireland. Of the 50 to 80, 36 million are in the US, Irish. So the population here, it's not only the medical or healthcare workers, the general population, people are leaving, but the government is identified it and doing something to curb the immigration. With the result is that in Ireland, the health service is essentially being held by Nigerians, Pakistanis, foreigners, Indians, and then Philippines, healthcare workers, doctors, nurses. So it's a very major, serious issue. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. It is some developed countries, Western European countries do have the same problem. The difference is that the governments are identifying the problems and trying to reverse, but I can tell you that it's quite hard. Doctors are in short supply in Ireland. The same with nurses, healthcare professionals, and even other skilled workers. A friend recently came to Ireland from the breweries in Nigeria, and is working with Amazon. That's a good example. He's working with Amazon as he trained in Nigeria mechatronics. In his department, they are offering him 2,000 euro for one single person he would introduce and bring to the country. There are shortfalls, and he is approaching the persons, his friends in Nigeria, to come and fill the vacancies. Ditto with many other nationals, especially after Brexit. It is a big problem, not only in Nigeria. In Nigeria, the Japa, but here also, immigration is a very serious issue. They are losing workers, skilled and unskilled.
Okay, thanks so much, Doctor. Back here, Dr. Binder, you can see both sides of this issue now. For those who initially didn't make up their minds, who didn't want to go, but circumstances dictated their movement. And the fact that other countries are also facing what we now know as the Japa syndrome, Nigeria leaving off. But the difference here is how are we responding to those reasons, the reasons why people are leaving. If you find out now that there's a huge number of youths, young people who are leaving, and they have all kinds of reasons for doing that.
Well, it's very interesting, actually, particularly listening to the Irish contributor. the medical doctor, on very practically how the whole world is actually, in science we call it the osmosis, when you're moving from one area, hopefully from where you have a high concentration to areas where you have low concentration. It's a natural movement. Nigeria went through that in the 70s, possibly and early 80s. I was taught in secondary school by chemistry, physics, mathematics, even English by foreigners, Pakistanis, Indians, Bangladeshi, and we learned a lot. In the university, in our engineering faculty, we were taught by Polish engineers and Bangladeshis and so on. But you see, I have a feeling that the brain drain syndrome that we are trying to explain here is Nigeria is yet to take a very, very solid resolution on keeping quality manpower to run its affairs so that we can position ourselves in the global community of nations. I think we are not doing enough. We too, in this, like Prof said, in the 70s and 80s, we were massively producing single honors kind of graduates, chemistry, physics, biology, and so on, and we're exporting, literally exporting them to other areas. But that was then. The population was little, and our administrations or our politicians and managers were managing well, and so on and so forth. Now, we have like 250 conventional universities, both federal, private, and state-owned universities. How come that this huge infrastructure is not able to massively produce the critical mass of this manpower to the extent that we are now feeling the brain drain? The issue is there are universities, and Prof can testify to this, where you can go. You do not have good workshops to train good engineers. You do not have fantastic laboratories to come up with very, very competent medical doctors. You do not have, even the lecturers that you require who are dynamic in the sense that they used to be analog, now they're digital. We do not have universities with internet infrastructure, broadband base that you can, research and find things out. If these 250 or so universities were operating at this level, we wouldn't have been discussing like that. Look at India. India used to export thousands and millions of people to the US. But the same professors from MIT are the ones that have gone back to India to establish systems like Infosys. These are global companies providing software to the banking applications. They were from MIT. South Koreans, massively, they trained their people in the US. Many are now in their 50s and their 60s. They're going back to Korea. But what is the difference? These people who have jackpot or whatever out of their countries, when you go back, the country has managed to maintain the healthcare to the extent that still you can take your wife into a hospital, she'll deliver well and go back home. 2, still your income is reasonably, can look after you. The schooling of your children is still standard. You will not have to run around looking for private institutions. Today you are in here and out and so on and so forth. And more so, they don't have what I call as an internal brain drain. There is also career prostitution in our country. You'll find that a space scientist might end up becoming a custom officer in our country. We have lost that energy. You might find a medical doctor ending up in a bank. It's all like the gentleman said, partly economic, but I think policy-wise, we're not looking at this in a very, very strategic way to ensure that what are the numbers? What are the professional areas? How do we replenish this? What do we do to ensure that our production system for this critical mass of professionals does not slow down and get frustrated?
Well, at this point we also have a number of reports, and still trying to get which one of those reports would be ready at this point in time. Perhaps we have the one from Lagos, this one from Lagos.
Sure, there is a Nigerian.
According to an immigration expert, Victor Lutenko, about 70 million Nigerians live outside the country. He said 2,000 Nigerians legally leave the country almost on a daily basis, while between 300 to 500 live illegally. Migration is a natural phenomenon. If it is done in a legal way, it can contribute to the economic growth of Nigeria.
Those 15 to 17 million Nigerians abroad, they do represent probably the biggest unexplored development potential of the country. Besides huge amount of money, or even more than that, these people have an immense amount of knowledge. They know everyone in this world.
If they are going to get knowledge, which we need at this point in Nigeria, to better Nigeria, to make things better, I don't mind.
A migration of skilled and qualified Nigerians to foreign countries in search of greener pasture has created serious vacuum in some skilled professions, especially in the health sector.
Is when we experience the so-called brain waste. It's when the doctors are leaving from Nigeria, and when they go abroad, they have to be taxi drivers. It's when, teachers from here are going into construction jobs. And in 2, 3, 4 years, they're completely losing their qualification.
Of great concern is that many of those who leave are faced with uncertainty as to which direction to go.
I'm not considering Japa right now. It's not an option for me. Instead, I will encourage everyone to believe yourself. What is it that you have in your hands? Can you multiply it?
The fact that one person made it is not sufficient argument that people must close their shops. People actually who are worth in millions in this country sell it. Some borrow a lot of money and move it out.
The country does not need the Japa syndrome. It's difficult, but Japa syndrome is saying, we're running away, we're running away. Nigeria is impossible, things are impossible. Let us reflect again. This is our land. A little bit of patriotism will make us fight to have justice, fight to have economic justice, fight to have a place, safe places for us all. We must unite.
Stakeholders believe that government at all levels, religious leaders, and society in general need to rise up and take the bull by the horn to check the brain drain through the illegal Japa syndrome, through the provision of enabling environments, job creation, and proper orientation on the dangers of illegal migration. In Lagos, Bolaji Aki.
All right, our next report comes from Kanu.
Brain drain has been an issue of great concern to Nigerians, considering its impact on all sectors of the nation's economy, with health sector carrying much of the burden. In this sector, an estimated 200 medical and health practitioners leave Nigeria for abroad every month in search of greener pastures. Arising from the General Assembly of Nigeria Medical Students Association, one of the major concerns for the future medical practitioners is the brain drain. Abdulrahman Habib Maigiwa, a final year medical student, is surely disturbed about the level at which the doctors who are supposed to provide mentorship are now leaving the country, which creates additional gap in the field.
So it's sort of like the system kind of like primes you from the beginning to work in place, to want to work in places where your efforts are appreciated.
Stress of the work, it's increasing. You hardly can believe if I tell you in a single department you see like 20 to 25 personnel, health personnel, both doctors and then the nurses, exiting the system to another side of the country, the developing countries.
Although some professionals and the nation's best brains prefer to remain in the country, poor working environment compel them to weigh in between patriotism and staying at the right atmosphere for their practice.
They want to go out, even this common survival things like electricity and water and the security. I think that will make people run away. So there are quite a lot of people, a lot of our academic colleagues who have left the country because over there is better. You have opportunities for research grant. You have opportunities for travel. You have opportunities for promotion.
Most individuals, they want a greener pasture for their own self, their immediate family, and then of course, yes, everybody wants to practice in a very standard way, which you don't have much burden or much physical responsibilities to take care of.
So long as the attraction is there and the right things are not done here, the experts noted the challenge will continue to exist. In Kano, Amin Umar.
Well, Professor Olabisi, listening to that last report from Kano, where people are talking about better opportunities and moving for economic reasons, like Dr. Binder and Dr. Wike have already mentioned. There's also the other part of it, where social amenities are in short supply. So,
thank you very much once again. Yes, migration is a normal phenomenon, like we have said. And so you look at it, there are gains and there are losses. And if you look at people who have gone out and the money they are returning back to the country, either to build a future home for themselves or support families. I think somewhere it was quoted for low middle countries to be like about 550 billion. So it's a lot of money, that they bring back. But what we also need to understand is that there is also a not very palatable part of migration, even the problem that people face abroad, depending on how you live and what you do and whether you are lucky, in terms of having the right type of job and protection. Xenophobia, we know what is happening in South Africa today. Nigerian population is so large, that if the citizenry, the root cause is to leave the country, we actually become menace to the world. We become menace to the world. So it's more than you are selling your brains. We become nuisance of what we don't want Nigeria to be. There are few people who are lucky who have made it, but there are many, that it's not too palatable, the experience abroad. And so they also give us very bad names. So for me, I think as a nation, we have come to a critical stage. Yes, migration is a normal phenomenon, but for now, it's exposing the weakness of governance. It's exposing what Nigeria is not supposed to be. It's exposing that things are really wrong at home. It's also telling us that our institutions are not working unless we deceive ourselves. And I take, for example, you train medical doctors here, and even immediately after, it's not like before, where the professional journey is so well laid out. Today, you have them come out of school ordinarily to find a space for housemanship. It is a tug of war for parents looking for, because you have regulated system of where they can do housemanship, and you find out that it's a tug of war, even looking for a space to do housemanship. And that is even when you are paying them almost less to nothing to train. To find a place to do residency is a problem. And so a young person, medical school, waiting to get a place for residency, not that he has not passed an exam, and he's waiting about 2 or 3 years. You expect that person to stay in the country. So they move out. So what am I saying? We need to build our infrastructure. Human capital is the best that nature has given to any society, to our country. The best we have is our people. When a country stops investing in its own persons, I don't know then what we have. When you pay people less than what they want of wages, I don't know what then we are spending money on. Yes, we want to be like other developed nations. We want to build bridges and infrastructure. Any nation that puts that before humanity is actually not a nation. So I think we need to come back to what is most important in humanity, and that is the human person. When you build the human person, you are already building a nation. When you build bridges and you build all the gigantic stuff, because you want to pretend to be industrialized, the human person can bring down everything you have built in a day. They can destroy it in a day, and we have seen it. So for me, I think the issue of migration is leading to a point of view in the life of Nigeria. As a country, Nigeria has to look at its own worth in building up a nation. We have put our mind so much in ephemerals, and we have left priorities. Our priority is the human person. Our priority is what we are doing to the human soul. It is our right to be educated. It's not, we are not begging for it. Every Nigerian child should be educated. When we are educated properly, and as a child, our health is taken into consideration, we tend to have a commitment to our nation. Even when we go out, we will come back. But when our citizenry start to move out, it is a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that their heart is not in the country that they are born into. So for me, looking at they are going out is actually a symptom. It's taking us from the root of the cause of where we are today. And I think what we need to do is Nigeria itself to respect professionalism. You can imagine someone who had never, I'm sorry to say this, who don't have a middle level of what it is to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be a professor, who decides, and the language, the language is so that we can dispose of you. Available, we bring. So I think the first commitment is the humanity of Nigeria itself. When the government is committed to its own humanity, people will stay back. Even when they go out, they will go out and bring the best back into the country. So my own contribution is that currently, I'm not sure whether we have a structure, a structure that protects human capital. Okay. And I'm not sure that as a country, we actually know the best that nature has given to us is our humanity in terms of labor, in terms of the labor, in terms of dominion that we have to take on our own environment. It's about the people. Yes, there is a lot of technology and so on taking place. At the heart of that is the humanity of that technology. So it's a clear call to the Nigerian government. We need to look into our institutions. Okay. Why is it that our teaching hospitals are falling out? Why is it that our universities are not working? It is not a time, it is not a time to just gloss over issues. It's a time to intelligently look at why our institutions are not working and make it work for the future of this country, so that they can have something to govern over. So for me, the issue of migration is a symptom of that something wrong with our governance space, and it's a time for us to deal with that. Thank you.
Well, at this point in time, we'll take a short break. When we return, the phone lines will be open. It means you can join in the conversation in the studio. And we'll also have a couple of new reports looking at the issues at stake from a different perspective. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly. Thanks for staying with us. This is a segment where you can join in the conversation. The lines to call will be on your screen. Advise you take advantage of those. If you have a question or a comment, we say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in tonight and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. We also encourage you to go straight to the point. We ask you not to bother too much about the greetings, just a mere hello would do. So bring in those calls and let's have a conversation on this. Well, we'll start off with another of our reports. This one is from Port Harcourt.
In the last 2 decades, there has been substantial emigration of workers from Nigeria to America, Canada, and Asian countries. The exodus of highly skilled personnel, according to analysts, is worrisome. They attributed some of the reasons to political instability, poor quality of life, limited access to quality health care, education, and shortage of opportunities, especially in mechanized agriculture and industrialization.
God has blessed Nigeria so well that we have a lot of mineral resources here. It's just that everybody is giving emphasis on oil, oil, oil. What about agriculture? God has blessed us. Agriculture, we have a lot of people here in Nigeria that if the government can empower them, create industry for agriculture, agriculture will do well.
They have to build hospitals, they have to put professionals there that knows their job, that know what they are doing.
The rate of unemployment in Nigeria is disturbing, and the only effective way to reducing that high rate of unemployment and getting more people busy is through enterprise.
In the search for greener pastures, many professionals in health, education and potential entrepreneurs are leaving the country. The adverse effects on the economy are no doubt enormous. The worrisome aspect of it is that many of them are leaving the country at all costs, unmindful of the negative effects and the uncertainties which lie ahead. This has resulted in some of them embarking on a voyage of no return.
Most times I look forward to get some things from them. The complaint they give me, I feel like, what's the essence of being there when you can't even rest? You're doing 2 jobs. You're telling me you have bills to pay. In a month you have to pay $2,000 to stay in your house.
People here in Nigeria, they have properties, they are doing well, they sold their properties and they travel to the UK and to the London. Some of them, they are suffering, no job. And some of these agents, they will not tell you the real truth.
As the effects of brain drain known as the Japa syndrome is dwindling the economy, ripping it off potential entrepreneurs and skilled workers, experts say it behoves on the government to address factors prompting skilled and talented persons to leave the country in search of greener pasture. In Port Harcourt, Ijomu Gweke, NTA News.
All right, that report from Port Harcourt, and from there we take on this next one from Enugu.
Alarming rate of the departure of Nigerian professionals from the shores of Nigeria to overseas in search of the so-called greener pasture is unprecedented in the annals of Nigeria. The era of austerity measure, which had brain drain as checking out syndrome, did not near the current turbulent wave of Japa, where Nigerian families, both old and young, engineers, scientists, doctors, and other health workers are living in droves. The impact of brain drain on the country's education and health sectors fell due to the country's economy, as the respondents noted that the loss of tax revenue, lack of qualified teachers, and experts have been detrimental to providing education opportunities to many citizens.
So, we have a situation where we are losing our qualified sons and daughters. We are losing them to the point that it will get to a place where we can no longer have the critical mass of educated people, intelligent people, talented people to drive our economy or to drive our technology.
The health professionals are no longer there. The qualified doctors, they have left. Then you come to the universities and other higher institutions. Many of us are still staying because we believe that we cannot leave Nigeria.
Ironically, overcrowding a particular area can lead to higher taxes, which have a ripple effects on the migrated professionals. Against the backdrop of a better offer and conditions of service abroad, home remains home, and sense of patriotism need to be of utmost priority.
It is very paradoxical for you to imagine someone having to leave his own oil-rich home country to another oil-rich country, like leaving Nigeria for Saudi Arabia, leaving your own kit and kin, your community, without a doctor, without people to treat them, for another person's country, and begin to also talk to our colleagues that you have to offer something for the country that trained you.
And our people will move with that knowledge and everything to that country. And they offer salaries, as incentive. I call it salary as incentive because when you see what our brothers pass through, in the name of working there, you understand that they are equally passing through the same slavery, but this time around modern economic slavery.
The key players, however, advise the government at all levels to create safe environment, tackling insecurity, train Nigerian youths abroad to acquire higher level technical know-how for local production, and raise standard of living, so as to reawaken the desire to stay and work for the country. In Enugu, Ikeria, Ubu, and
all right. Let's take the issues now to Afolabi Mokwede, who's in Lagos. And well, in one of those reports, attention was drawn. I mean, there have been examples of professionals, people who have left because, as they say, the grass is greener on the other side, and on getting to the other side, they couldn't really find the green grass. And so you had highly trained people who have resorted to doing jobs that they would not do here. Driving taxi cabs, and some of them, without the relevant skills, finding it difficult to get those jobs, the best jobs that they had dreamed of. And in some cases, some say, well, you're never going to get those top-notch jobs in those countries you go to. So why still the pool?
Well, I think one of the first reasons for that is the fact that, you know, when you go into any and every country, they have their rules, just like Dr. Wabufo was discussing. Yeah, he had to take the exams, board exams, and what have you. So sometimes those are what you call side hustles or hustles that people do just to stay afloat till they can get into the proper system after they've written their exams, certifications, and what have you. But I would rather want to concentrate on a few things across the entire conversations. I think the first thing, and just like Professor Aino was saying, that we need to speak some hard truths to ourselves. I think the first thing is for us to agree that the worlds of the 60s, 70s, and 80s are gone. And they are not coming back. And it's all over the world. So it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. So those days are not coming back. The days we are in right now, and like I said earlier, it's competitiveness, you know, and just like some other speakers have also spoken, people will move. I mean, just have you heard the case of Dublin? People will move for a better package to other countries, and that's what it is. So I think that for us as a country, we need to revisit funding our education. And been in all the reports, there have been questions raised around tertiary education and what. That is a topic on its own, and perhaps you want to take that up in another session. Funding our education, what do we really want to do? We can't continue the way we do it right now, because in any of these countries, and I remember one of our guests in the studio was talking about North Carolina. Any of those universities in North Carolina don't pay what we do. The students there don't pay what we pay here. So we still get the best or the cheapest form of education globally, particularly tertiary education. So we need to really revisit that issue, because that's what will make us competitive. That's what will make the output competitive. Also, let's also look at the fact that civil service reforms as well. Everyone has cited examples of how when they went out and came back, there were jobs waiting, jobs in the public sector. Again, if our civil service or our public sector are not paying living wages, competitive wages, I mean, everybody will stay elsewhere, whether in the private sector or anywhere else, but the public sector. Another point we need to also realize, now a lot of the talent we're talking about now that are leaving for the countries that have been highlighted, Australia, Canada, and wherever you, they are actually not leaving for themselves. They are leaving for the posterity of their children. So you'll find there have been many allusions in the reports where people who are actually living well, who are living and earning well, are having to leave because they consider the fact that the education for their children going forward. And that's why you find a lot of them are leaving. So it comes back again to what do we really need to do to fund our educational system to be able to give us the kind of quality that we desire and that we need to be able to compete properly. I must also correct some indications in the report So yes, of course, we talk about Nigeria and Japa and what have you. When you still look at the Japa list, Nigeria is not anywhere near top 3 or top 5. You have a whole lot of people in all of these countries, India, China, Pakistan, a lot of these countries still outnumber Nigerians in just like we also had the Dublin experience. So sometimes it's not, yes, there is the jackpot. Yes, people are leaving. Yes, our capital are leaving. But there's still a significant number of our population that is here, and we must think about how to make the system here work and competitive enough for them to stay, and also attractive enough for those who have left to come back. Let's recall very recently the Honorable Minister of Communications and Technology, Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, is curating right now Nigerians who have excelled all over the world in artificial intelligence to be able to drive forth our policy, Nigeria's policy in artificial intelligence. Now, that's where you begin to get the benefit of our people doing well all over the world. So I think that the focus must really be homeward, revisit the critical issues that we must address around funding, funding our education, critical reforms in the civil service, and then again, the living economy, the everyday living economy for the everyday Nigerian. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And back to Dublin, where Dr. Wabu for Wike, a medical practitioner. Let's link up with him once again. And I've heard some people say, well, even if professionals are leaving, what we can do is train more professionals, and it's good for them to go. This is our export to the world, where you have Nigerians who are holding fort in other countries, and it means Nigeria is a country to reckon with.
Yes, absolutely. Philippines is an example. It is almost a policy, they export labor officially, and their nationals all over the world, wherever they are working, they are linking home, taxes they pay everywhere, the government is looking after them. You find out that in Dublin, for instance, they are all over everywhere. In Britain, they are everywhere. I went to China, they are everywhere. In the Middle East, they are everywhere. But let's come back to the basics. The difference is that the policy, what is government policy? What is the government doing about what's the government doing about all this? As a medical student in the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, I went to St. George's in the UK, just a few months. The standard in Lut was far, what did I say? Far ahead of what I saw in St. George's in 1982-83. I practice here in teaching hospitals, and I see the medical students and student nurses, they come. If I look back to our days in Lut, we were miles apart. For the same Lut that the College of Medicine that we attended, all students are now contributing to even maintain the Great Hall. Everywhere is dilapidated. Everywhere. As a student in the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, we felt every inch like doctors, smartly dressed in our clinical coats and all that. We had the exposure, we had the training, world standard. What I'm hearing now doesn't give cause for joy. what one hears, it is unheard of to hear about sorting. It's the colleagues, relations in Nigeria are saying to me, Uncle, send this, send that for sorting. You know, what is sorting? If you don't buy handout, you don't pass. If you don't pay this, and some schools are notorious for that. Now, we leave that apart. It has to do with government policy, not all this propaganda. They won't bring anybody back. There has to be a determined effort by government to reverse this by putting the enabling conditions, addressing the issues. And making the condition of living, even when the persons graduate, making the standard of living, the pay, it will not naturally equate with what people receive outside of Nigeria in Europe. But at least when I was in the medical school, I did not bother. Then Nigeria was having technical exchange, sending persons to America, to most European countries. I didn't bother to fill any form. I was confident that I was going to study medicine in Nigeria, and I did. And studying in Nigeria then, I'll give you an example. Colleagues that came to Ireland earlier than we did not do any exams, especially if you attended the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and the University College Ibadan. No exams, because the standards were very high. Now they don't even allow Nigerian doctors there is no training for Nigerian trained doctors. Doctors from Egypt, doctors from India, Pakistan, because the standards have gone so low, so very low.
Well, Doctor, that's another point that we'll take back here with Professor Nuhu Yakub. Two issues here, I'll say. We allow the standards to fall, and so graduates that are produced in here, now they have introduced all kinds of conditions. But ironically, you still see that the same Nigerian graduates who have been produced here go to those countries and they're doing so well and they're in high demand. How do you explain this?
Well, I think this debate about falling standard of education has been on for a very long time. And I always, when this issue comes up in a discussion of this nature, I always refer or recall what late Professor Bab Fafunwa said about falling standard. He said, we do not use only one factor, particularly spoken English, as a basis for determining who is actually competent in the courses or the disciplines they specialize in. The issue really is, and I'm happy that you mentioned this point about the fact that people talk about falling standards and our children will go out there and still excel. I think we have not actually defined what falling standard is all about. In fact, one of the other points that Fafunwa raised, of the Blessed Morning raised, is that in the 50s, 60s, people sit for 36 papers at O level and they get their A's or A1 and so on and so forth. Now you have a situation where students who sit for 9, sometimes even beyond 9 to up to 12 courses. And it is not enough to now say, oh, the standard was higher in the 50s, 60s, but they have now been lowered. By who? Well, I quite agree. And we also faced, it was a problem I faced as a chief executive of two universities. Funding was a problem. Probably, the limited number of courses people are doing in the 60s and, in the 50s and 60s, there was adequate funding, and, the classes were small. I was mentioning earlier just now that, I taught a class of over 150 students. And it's a problem communicating effectively in that class, because some people will stay at the back door and they'll be making noise. They will not even listen to what you are saying. Some people don't come to class. I remembered that I denied two students from graduating in the very year they were supposed to graduate because they didn't meet the attendance the percentage measure of attendance that they were supposed to meet.
Prof, let me ask you to pause a while.
Yes.
Let's see if we can get in this first call here. Robert calling in from Abuja. Hello, Robert, go ahead.
Good evening.
Yes.
I want to contribute a little to your program tonight. The brain drain syndrome, to some extent, is of advantage to this nation. Can you imagine if those that have jetted out were all still in Nigeria? Will there be space for the people that are oncoming from the background? For instance, with all the number outside, before you find placement for housemanship, you have to go to the eye of a needle. And you have to know a minister, you have to know a senator, you have to know people who are highly placed. It's not open. It's not on merit anymore. So if these people were still all here, I believe there'll be confusion. So if you look at it from that angle, the brain drain is of advantage to the people of this country.
All right.
But let me look at it at the other end. Now, the executive has completely failed the Nigerians. Before you get a placement, no matter how qualified you are as an engineer, as a doctor, a lawyer, before you get placement in the civil service, you have to pay through your nostrils. Jobs are sold to people who can afford them. So if you look at it from that angle, the executive have failed us. And you can see the menace in the legislature. And of recent, you can see what is brewing in the judiciary. Judiciary that's supposed to be the last hope of a common man. It seems to be giving way to this menace. Now, with this huge confusion, some people are committing suicide. People who have no people to assist them are committing suicide. So the opening outside this country for some to go will help us.
Okay. All right.
So except we take care of the system in this country, to the left, to the right, to the front, except we take care of except there are structures, genuine structures that encourage the citizenry with their brain to remain here. If there are no genuine structure and it is in this way that it is going, the door is open. And I think this is just the beginning of Exodus. That's what I think to see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Well, that's another angle to read. When more people leave, then there will be more spaces, more opportunities for those who remain.
Well, you know, what do you say about Chinese population, where there are about 1 billion?
Okay. Well.
And people, they produce. I mean, I think what is required, as a matter of fact, is policy. I mean, putting in place a policy measure that will arrest a known problem.
Dr. Binder.
Yes. Robert actually is very funny to the last contribution to do with spaces and so. That's very simplistic. But I think
exactly
our discussion is at the highest level. For me, yes, brain drain might be an international issue, is everywhere and everything is happening. But I think we all should be interested in losing our very best. I think this discussion reminds me of one very good friend of mine, an Indian man working in Lagos, an entrepreneur, who said to me in my office when I was DG Nota, he said, Dr. Bindi, Nigeria is full of dollars. Everywhere, dollars is flying in the air. It's like you take a basket and you sweep dollars into your basket, but you need very special glasses to see those dollars. All what he was saying is that there are enormous opportunities in our country. If it is money that is making you leave Nigeria, there are opportunities to make money. If there are better standard of living, there are opportunities for us to make the standard of living in this country better. So the issue is understanding that, first, unless you have crispy manpower, you cannot expose the opportunities in your country. We are not talking about anybody who is leaving. When you are talking about researchers who spend 18 hours sometimes out of 24 in their laboratories trying to crack a medical issue or an extract out of or active ingredients from a plant to see the behavior, or studying a frog to see how to deal with it, and you lose that kind of person after spending so much money establishing infrastructure for it, you have to be concerned. Secondly, if your university, the numbers are increasing. I mean, before Obasanjo's administration, there was not one single private university in this country before 1999. It was from 1999 to date, we have equal number of private universities, probably more than even the number of federal universities. Now, all that expansion, and it is not producing the critical mass of young people who can see the opportunities in the red goats in Sokoto to make leather, who every time we see a road commissioned in the States, is some foreigner behind the governor or the commissioner commissioning. That has to worry us. When you go to engineering facilities, you don't see Nigerians in Nigeria solving Nigeria's problem to do with providing water, building schools and houses, to processing agriculture products to make sure that food is available. That is a worry. We have a space agency here, right? And space agency is the mother of the highest level of technological development. When you have an agency, you even have a communication satellite, and they claim that they have satellites in orbit. And still, our Nigerian communication satellite cannot be supported to provide internet connectivity down to primary schools to ginger the capacity that we require. It's a worry. And it is not because Nigerians are bad or whatever. I think leadership, I don't mean just the president or the Senate president or whatever, leadership everywhere in this country should be interested comparatively to say, if the higher education ranking globally of universities is showcasing that America has more than 100 universities in the top 200 universities, the Nigerianness should be gingered to say, why are there no Nigerian universities in this? You know, so it's not for us to celebrate somebody, a Nigerian working in the space industry in the US, or a Nigerian working in Microsoft in the US, or a Nigerian working. No, we must be able to look at the sad situation that we have. Our poverty is very high, you know, and our human development, the capital is very low. This is.
Let me take in this call from Umar, who's calling in from Suleja. Hello, Umar. Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, Umar. Go on.
Aradogan.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cyril. Thank you. I want to contribute to the fact that the brain drain trouble we have is in negation to the growth of the country itself. And Mr. Cyril, you agree with me. Yourself as a resource person in NTA, just imagine you not being there with all the quality of what you have been putting in NTA. If one thing or the other costs you to Japa, it will be a great loss to us. From my youthful days in secondary school, I've been seeing you, and you are an inspiration. I've not slept till now because I want to watch you, hear you, how you analyze, how you organize, how you plan all things. Now, what is the solution to our brain drain? The other madam there talked about it. The emphasis we need to emphasize, we need to lay concrete emphasis and finance material and give all that we needed to give to human resource, the people. The people. The country is just, we're going down, 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 with all our good heads running out. It's not a plus that people are going out and we're keeping quiet. The best of our brain are running away. So government should emphasize and lay emphasis and finance, not just map finance. They should finance and lay emphasis on education. Human resources that needed to be brought up, the support we needed, the education we needed, and some of the money they are giving it out, it's ending up in the hand of all these politicians and our corrupt leaders. It's a problem we all know, and we have been keeping quiet about it. It's killing the youth. So, Siri, please, thank you for this program, but all the people contributing, thank you all, but I tell you, people in government, we need to sit up and stop this corruption. Stop this neglect of the children from nursery, primary, secondary to the university.
All right.
The Lord will help us.
Right. Thank you very much, Omar from Suleja. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's bring in Professor Olabisi Aino at this stage. We've just got a few more minutes to go on this program. And at this point, the question should be, what are we not doing right? Or what should we channel more energy into to make sure that we don't lose the best resource we have to other countries?
Thank you very much. I think I am not going to belabor what we had already put in so straightforward. Those who have migrated, and they have the right to migrate. And I think everybody who decides to migrate, we always migrate. We can't stop migration. But I think what we can do is to improve the domestic environment and make it attractive for those who have not migrated yet, because they can also migrate, and also to make it attractive even for the future generation. And so for me, I think the country needs to declare what I would call state of emergency of labor. I think we need it. Because if you are an expert in labor, I am not sure whether any theory of labor is fitting into what we have presently in Nigeria. You look at even what you call relatively the low-skilled labor. If you go to the street and you are looking for mechanics for this and, those vocational level kind of labor, you can hardly get anyone anymore. Everybody is turned to Okada business. The population of semi-demi illiterate or those who can't get a job are actually not doing anything productive. They are running Okada business. I know what it is. You make money for 2 years, you have this accident one day. What you need to take care of yourself for that one day, you don't even have it in your savings. So you then look at those who are educated, those who went to school as engineer are coming back and doing something else, even right here, not even abroad alone. Those who are in medical practice are not proud to the medical doctors anymore. They are moving into agriculture. whether the one that trained for agriculture is moving into something. For me, I'm not sure whether there's any particular theory of labor that is fitting into where we are today. So not to waste the time, because I know we have shortage of time, declare emergency in the labor sector, reinvigorate the value of work for Nigerians, make, put emphasis on what it is to be a Nigerian for the government. We are the baggage of the government, whether young or old. We are supposed to be protected by our governance, our government. And when you do that, we stay at home. But when we have a government who does not care, not just today, it's built up over years. It doesn't matter who you are. Go to places. People will leave. You will leave to where you are protected and your humanity is protected. And I think what we are asking is that let the country know that the first major duty to its nationals is, first of all, protect their humanity. Let them be able to be comfortable to live within their own natural environment. When you cannot do that, people will leave.
All right. Thank you so much. And Afolabi Mokwede, well, you're with us too. And you just heard Professor Aino talk about enunciating policies and determining exactly. I mean, she even called for a state of emergency. They were putting back pride into, into labor.
So I completely agree with her. Dignity in labor is lost on us as a people. And I don't think it's really about government. I think it's about all of us as Nigerians. We are all stakeholders in this moving train. So yes, I agree with her about that dignity of labor is very key. I also think, I shudder when I hear policy, because my little experience with public sector tells me that we are not lacking in policies, actually. I think what we're actually lacking is implementation of policies and harmonizing policies, wherein too many policies are cross purposes with each other. So I wouldn't want to make any closing statements around policies at this point. It's really about implementing. And when we talk about funding education, for example, we have situations where many states are not able to harness their counterpart funding, UBEC counterpart funding, because they are not putting their own bit. And, the money stays there for year on year on year. And why is that? So that's now even just for your primary, elementary, primary to junior secondary, thereabout. When we go into universities again, I mean, there have been talks around autonomy, full autonomy. I mean, any university we're talking about, someone give the example about rating America having 100 plus universities in your top 200. For example, there's none of those universities that are run the way we run our universities. So these conversations are they're there, they're on the table. And the policies are bound. So I think for me, it's really about strong leadership as government at all levels, and really then with all of us as stakeholders, really just deciding, how we want to go, and bootstrapping our way out to maximize value for those of us who are still here, and making the country attractive for those who are here and those who are out who may want to come back to add value to what we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And off to Dublin, Dr. Wabufo Wike.
Very much. I'll still fall back on the Dublin experience. Over here in Ireland, there are different routes. We seem to be talking more about the third level, top professionals, doctors, engineers, and others. But in Ireland, the government pays great attention to apprenticeship. Apprenticeship, very, very important. Professor Aino touched on that. And in Ireland, they structured it in such a way that people that cannot progress proceed straight from secondary school after the Leaving Cert to university or third level education can go through other routes like FETAC, where the 2 years apprenticeship, and then from there, if they still desire to get to the third level, there are different routes to get there. But the government emphasizes training and retraining. Very important, training and retraining. That is one experience I found that is serving the people of Ireland in good state. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Back here in Abuja, Professor Nuvi Yakub. Well, another way of looking at it, I think it was Dr. Wabu Fawike who said that they are offering incentives to people who are out there to introduce more people from these parts who would like to go there. So some would say, why not also introduce incentives to make those who have gone out there to come back?
Well, I mean, somebody was saying earlier that, you know, migration, you know, is more or less like observing fundamental human rights. People can move to wherever they want to go to, and if they want to come back, they are also free to come back. I think what we need to really address seriously is to look critically at our education system. I think we have actually lost, you know, the momentum that our education system used to have. And if we do not go back to, because, you know, you can come up with theories. You know, you can also make suggestions, or let's try and get, you know, artisans, encourage them, motivate them, give them incentives to do what they need to do. Where we are now is a level of technological development. I think Dr. Binder, you know, mentioned this point earlier. You know, we seem to be, you know, more than, you know, 30 years behind, as far as I can see. And therefore, what do we do? How do we resuscitate our education system to make sure that, you know, the relevant technological focus, innovations, incentives to, you know, compete at the highest level, that will get to that point? If we are still modern about, you know, using whole technology, I mean, it was Walter Rodney that said colonialism came to Africa and met whole technology, and they didn't improve on it, you know. And up till now, agriculture is not mechanized, it's not modernized. So if we do not actually get, you know, the technical experts that can help us to go into innovative agriculture, I don't think we're going anywhere. So the same thing in other areas, in medicine, in engineering, and so on and so forth. So I think that, you know, if we really want to, I mean, let's go back to learn experiences of the Asian tigers, as they were called, in the 80s. Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and all these countries. How did they, you know, cut through? How did they go beyond the level we're still in? If we do not address all those critical issues, I think we'll just be wasting our time. We have serious challenges before us, and education is central to, you know, actually getting, you know, our way out.
So, and on a final note, Dr. Binder, using that same platform of education, producing the engineers who would think outside the box, who would not need to go and take up a job at Microsoft, who would do research, who would come up with innovations. Well, you can see that governance has been structured along those lines now, paying attention to science, technology, and innovation. So.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. You see, you remember I was secretary to the government in a state, and I can tell you, yes, it's easy to discuss this at the federal level. But when you drop to states, it's even worse. There are states where you can count the number of professionally trained physics teachers on fingers of one hand, the whole state. There are schools where it is only youth corpus that are the teachers. And so these have to change. Secondly, you remember a year or 2 years ago, UNESCO came up with the data that we have 30 million children out of school. This is everywhere in this country. This should be a concern for, these are the future. Then we must be able to stress in many of the states that we must generate the interest of employment generation and wealth creation and wealth circulation, which seems to be rotating around train and look for jobs in public service. I think that should also be reviewed. And then you see now anywhere you go to, when people are talking about modernization, they say AI, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence requires huge amount of data. Where are the workers to collect this data? We have not even exhausted natural intelligence, that things that we see, not to talk of jumping to AI. It's not that it's bad, it's very good, but we have to be conscious. If we want to follow the world, we have to be very, very serious. We must also build in our own things the art of measuring, monitor, evaluate, impact assess. You don't normally hear, whether in the Senate or in the Houses of Assembly or in that, how many universities are ranked this year? What is the process of ranking? How many PhDs have we produced? How many of them are in the public sector? How many? We don't discuss about this. And then you recall just recently, we had permanent secretaries promotion. They even had an ICT test. It should not happen at this level. You should have happened from possibly when you become a chief. You are using a computer, you have been trained and retrained, not when you want to become a permanent secretary, and then you sit in a classroom and you are measured. This is very low by my standard. These things, we have to do them very, very deliberately. Once we are producing this massively, you will not even feel this brain drain. In fact, brain drain is a resource to bring back things, and then and we can measure this by the level of our poverty in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Okay, and it's on that note we must end this conversation. I'd like to say a big thank you to all our guests. Let me start off saying thank yous in the reverse order which they were introduced. We start from Dublin, Dr. Wabufo Wike, medical practitioner who joined us via Zoom from Dublin. You can just see them. Yes,
Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. And let me also say a big thank you to Afolabi Mokwede, a human capital strategist and financial accountant. Also joined us via Zoom from Lagos. Thank you. It's been great having you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
And let me also say a big thank you to Professor Olabisi Aina of the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, who joined us via Zoom from Ile-Ife. Thank you for your
time. No, as a countryman, it's trying time, but we overcome.
Right. Thank you. Okay, and back here in the Abuja studio, Professor Nuhu Yakub, it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
And Dr. Umar Bindir, thank you for bringing all these experiences to bear. One other aspect which we missed out, which we would have loved you to talk about, is how to encourage and support the young innovators, the young people who are coming and provide them the support through the various programs. Some of them have had some measured success in the past. Others have to be tinkered with. But we would have loved to hear one or two of those experiences from you.
Thank you very
both at
much.
national and at state levels.
Cheers.
Okay. And then, so that's our program today. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover, and I'll see you again.